Next time on a very spooky fine dining podcast, the season 1 finale, TGI Fridays the 13th. Oh, you betcha, pineapple's gonna hit the fan as Michael's son Juicy, or in this episode, Juice's son Voorhees, goes on a murderous rampage, and no one is safe. It gets real spooky, it gets real bloody, and not everyone's gonna make it to the end of the episode. Who will live, who will die? Listen to Fine Dining, the search for the most mediocre restaurant in America, break down a trip to TGI Fridays based on the atmosphere, the service, and the food, and try not to be scared to death. Hear the thrilling finale of Fine Dining, Wednesday, October 25th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Move over, ITV. Off, Robert Peston. This is the first leadership debate with me, Harriet Langley-Swindon, and it's totally non-censored. This is the weekly highlights of my daily radio show, and what a week it's been, hey, Martin.
Oh, absolutely. The race is on. Who will win?
The race is on.
We just don't know.
It's all anyone is talking about. I mean, this week we had quite a lot that unfortunately we couldn't feature in this show. I mean, we spoke to President Rajapaksa on his plane in quite some detail about Sri Lanka and the problems that the people are facing over there. But we just didn't have time for it, did we? We didn't have time.
An exclusive scoop, and we just couldn't fit it in because there's too much other content.
And a very powerful testament from Haiti, from someone who had lost their family in the gang wars. But we didn't have time. No time.
Yes. Sometimes there's too much news.
I mean, one of the things we have to do in this job is really prioritise about what's important. And unfortunately, other countries aren't. And the leadership debate in this country is.
Yeah, well, we're just telling it how it is, giving those hard truths to the people who specifically want to hear this particular brand of hard truth.
And I also want to remind our listeners that tickets are available for our live recording on the 10th of September at the London Podcast Festival. You can buy tickets at kingsplace.co.uk. And we do need all our listeners to buy because King's Cross is in North London and the wokies, they're just not going to go to it. They're scared of debate, they're scared of us, and they won't appear. So we need good British people, these listeners, to buy tickets, don't we, Martin?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure that No Such Thing as a Fish crowd are going to come and see our thing. So, I mean, just if you're listening, buy a ticket. We do need the support.
Buy a ticket indeed. Anyway, let's talk about the leadership debate. Despite what ITV might say, we actually had the first leadership debate this week. It was 3 of the frontrunners, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss and Suella Braverman. We did invite more, but Martin was in charge of getting them, and it turns out he messaged a parody account.
It's so difficult these days. It seems like just any so-called comedian can pose as a political figure. It's ridiculous.
Anyway, let's take a listen. Now, the first thing I want to say is, Suella, thank you for being here, but haven't you been knocked out?
No, I have not been knocked out of anything. And I'd prefer it if you called me the General, if you wouldn't mind. That's what they call me at home, is the General.
That's something I can really respect and get on board with. I'm the General. I am sorry. I'm sorry for mistaking. But it's wonderful that you're saying you haven't been knocked out. That's not what I heard. But I think this is what I've always admired about you, Suella, is that you don't need to be told what to do, whether it's by the law or anyone, really. You just go ahead and do your thing.
Well, yes, because as a person of country, I eat flags for breakfast and I stand for this country. I love this country so much. I am not going anywhere and I have not been kicked out yet. I think that's incorrect.
Liz, you're also a big fan of flags. I mean, I think actually you beat Suella in the fact that there are so many flags always in the background when you're doing videos.
Yes, and I sleep beneath flags.
So just very patriotic, both of you. And also both of you have advocated about how we should cut taxes, which I'm very for. But Rishi, let's go to you because you've been a bit more, been a bit more unsure about cutting taxes, haven't you? I mean, what's that about?
Listen, I think that over the course of the last few years, we made the difficult decisions and got the big calls right.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's it, is it?
I think that if you really look at it, then over the last couple of years, you will see that we got the big calls right and we did make a lot of difficult decisions.
Right, sorry. So could you illuminate on that a bit further?
So 2 years is a sort of unit of time, you see,
right.
That encompasses it's two sort of rotations around the sun. And during that period of time, there were a lot of decisions to make, many of which were quite difficult. But I think that if one were to look back, one would note that all of the big calls, these are the larger of the decisions, we got right.
Well, do you know what? I think it's wonderful. I think you really illuminated there. And I don't think anyone's going to have any questions about that. So, General, if you are knocked out of the race, obviously there's a bit of debate there. Who will you be throwing your weight behind, do you think?
Me, Liz Truss, me.
Well, I guess you would get my support, Liz.
Yes,
actually,
exactly,
I do think
me.
so. I think your respect for flags and pork as something as
and
a
cheese
person of country that I can and cheese.
hats.
Yes, and against the woke brigade and their bucket hats.
Yes, I like most hats, but not woke hats. So it's me, Liz Truss.
No, now, thank you for bringing us onto that, Liz, because we do need to talk about the attack of woke. Kemi, who's not here today, has been the biggest, dare I say it, flag bearer for the woke and how we have to sort of take them in hand, and that they're a really big threat. Can I ask you all? Let's start with you, Liz. What would you do about this increasing threat from the woke left?
There are several things we can try there, and it's something that I will implement on day one of my premiership. We can send them to Ukraine to fight in a war that we are fighting. And I think it would be, and I hate to use this word, ruddy good for them.
So we send the woke left to fight in Ukraine?
Yes.
Literal cannon fodder?
Ukraine. Yes. How's that polling? My team say yes.
Brilliant. I mean, I'm so glad that you're our Foreign Secretary is all I can say.
You're welcome.
With things like this. So, Suella, let's turn to you. I mean, what do you feel about the threat of the woke left? Is this something that you would be looking at if you were to be Prime Minister?
Oh, yes, of course. I would be dealing with that in the following ways. One of the first things I would do is begin a research group against the woke elites. I'd probably use public money for that group, but it would be a space in which we would look at their methods of attack, trying to, find ways to corner them online with their swarms that they have of crazy belief systems like human rights and things. We do a research group on that. And I also think that we should leave Eurovision.
Very interesting. Why should we leave Eurovision?
Well, it is the home of woke. The UK obviously won that with a song about space and I think the Queen, a beautiful British song by a British gentleman. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't approve of hair that long, but I think he was a great singer. So I would cancel Eurovision. We would leave that. We would start a research group to tackle this woke problem.
But Suella,
if you vote for me, Suella for Braverman.
Suella, wonderful. But it was Ukraine who won Eurovision. So, I mean, surely we that's rather nice, isn't it? No, Liz?
No,
they did not win.
Ukraine got a war. UK won the war and the Eurovision.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary, for that. Now, Rishi, you've been remarkably silent on the culture wars. Is this something that doesn't concern you as Prime Minister?
Well, to be honest, I think that there are such issues of such magnitude facing this country at the moment. And to give you a sense of how large the issues facing this country are, it's remarkable that they still exist, given that for the last 2 years we have consistently made the big calls right on a lot of difficult decisions. So you can imagine how large the problems would have been had we not done that. And I think that, it's all very easy to discuss these culture war issues if you're at a time of great national prosperity or something. But let's face it, people in this country have had it tough for 12 years and no reason, right? That is something that I think that we all know has happened. And rather than getting bogged down in who uses what toilet, we need to be asking the serious questions of, does every child need lunch?
Very good. Very good. I mean, I couldn't agree more. No is the answer to that. I don't know. I mean, you know better than I do. But not every child does need lunch.
Have you seen some of them?
Some of them
almost wobbly.
They really are little wobbly jelly beans, and you think, no, I don't think so. I think you could skip on that.
We've actually got some direct feedback from our Twitter listeners who have been following the conversation on hashtag non-censored. First up, I can say that the research group that Suella suggested, it went down okay, but unfortunately her suggestion that we leave Eurovision was not so popular. Rishi's his making the right calls on big decisions, very popular, doing very well, coming in with 40% of our vote there. But most popular is the suggestion from Liz to send refugees off to fight in Ukraine. So
Good.
that's what the people think. I mean, just a selection of the people, but there we go. Our listeners are quite clever. So
well, they weren't refugees, Martin. She was going to send the woke left to fight in Ukraine. So I think they've misunderstood.
Refugees are woke. Send them to Ukraine.
Well, I think that solves the refugee crisis. Now, listen, I want to talk to you all about Brexit. Obviously, Brexit, we want to get it done. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be really, really happening. Liz, I want to sort of start with you, because can you be trusted when you campaigned for Remain?
Yes, because trust is almost my name. Here's why you can trust me. Trust me. Because I campaigned originally for Remain, but in the 6 years that have followed, I have noticed several things. Number one, there's a shortage of food on supermarket shelves because of communism. 2, it's just good to leave. 3, I will be a prime minister from day one. And also 4, I'll be a prime minister from day one, but I've got a meeting at 10 with my milliner and then a shoot at 11. So from midday. And 5, Brexit.
Very concise and very moving. Rishi, Brexit. You're gonna get it through the door? You're gonna get it sorted? Are we finally going to get the Brexit we all want and need and deserve?
Well, listen, I think that the question of Brexit is settled. It was one of those large and difficult decisions that we made the correct call on. And I think that you'll find that, unlike certain members of this panel, I myself was in favour of it from day one. And I don't mean day one of campaign. I mean through my life. I of course, was born in Britain. Mm-hmm. I once went to Spain as a child on holiday and immediately threw up. If I ever see a euro, I shun it. And I think that you can probably appreciate that I see quite a lot of currency as a course of my day-to-day life. So yes, I have been extraordinarily consistent on this issue, unlike some other people on this panel, naming no names.
Oh dear. He makes some good points, I'm afraid. Now, Suella, we have to talk about, because you've been sort of instrumental in a lot of the Brexit negotiations, and you've got in a bit of trouble, haven't you, with your comments about the Northern Irish Protocol? You are, let's face it, the best lawyer in the country. So do you think you could use these skills to really finally get us the Brexit we've all been waiting for?
Oh, of course. I'd hit that gavel hard. They call me the flugelhorn of Brexit, actually.
Right.
And I agree with Rishi. I, like some people on this panel, not naming cheesy pork names, but I am not some kind of born-again Remainer flip-flopping. I've always been for a hard Brexit. I actually took my family to Dover recently so that they could sit in the queues and play a family game of Spot the Eddie Stobart van. And we really connected as a family during that time. And I get my family to sing the national anthem as we spot the vans in the queues. So yes, it's a hard Brexit for me.
Yes.
That's my flugelhorn sound.
Thank you. Lovely. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much. I do want to just address one thing. Is now our listeners won't be able to see this, but Rishi is the only one who doesn't have his camera on. Rishi, are you just being shy? What's going on here?
No, you know me, no fan of the cameras.
Yeah.
No, it's listen, my surroundings are not my usual surroundings. I'm not at the office at the moment. I'm elsewhere attending to some of my affairs. Not in the Boris style.
Right.
My business affairs.
Your business, and you don't want to sort of give any more information about where that might be.
Well, it's a scorcher in London.
Yes, it is. It is indeed.
So it's here. I'm here in a nice linen shirt.
Right.
Yeah, the London heat on my face and the London sand between my toes.
It sounds like you are almost certainly in London.
I am in a place that is governed from London.
Yes, right.
Technically.
Right, technically London. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and good luck with the leadership race.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.
How do I leave? I can't.
Yes.
Just press the button, Liz.
It's leave studio, Liz.
I would happily
funny.
press the button. I would happily press the button, but I can't.
It's funny how you can't even leave this meeting.
Back me,
See
Suella,
you.
back me. I need this. Suella, please, I need this.
Well, the General's changing her mind.
Liz, maybe just pull out the plug. Do it that way.
I'll do that.
So we had Eshaan Akbar back in the studio this week, and he was in rather a combative mood, wasn't he, Martin?
It's got a bit personal, to be honest, but that is what he does sometimes. I suppose.
Look, I'm all for that. I don't shy away from the personal, but it was a bit unnecessary. But wonderful. Obviously, he's always welcome, whatever he says. But we asked him for his hot and spicy takeaway this week about Rishi Sunak saying he didn't know any working class people. Eshaan, please tell us, what is this week's hot and spicy takeaway of the week?
Well, Harriet, you may have seen a video which showed a young Rishi Sunak being interviewed about the kind of friends that he has. And he makes it very clear that he has friends who are aristocrats, he has upper-class friends, and he makes it very clear that he has absolutely no working-class friends. And there was some outrage about this, people saying, come on, Rishi, you need to have working-class friends. But my hot and spicy takeaway of the week is this. Surely, a sign of your progress and social mobility is to no longer have the working-class friends you started your life with. Surely we can say that a sign of someone progressing through their life is if they're hanging out with Gary in the pub, that they no longer hang out with Gary in the pub. Gary's left in the pub, and you're outside the pub driving your lovely Range Rover or Rolls Royce. Surely that's a good thing. Surely that's the kind of country you want to be in.
So, Eshaan, are you saying that working class friends are sort of starter pack friends, rudimentary friendship tools that when you start to do well in life, you can leave behind and progress to more challenging friends?
Yeah, absolutely. The equivalent I would give it is, if you were to say a cereal box, right? And sometimes in the old cereal boxes, they used to give you toys. I don't know if you know anything about cereal boxes, Harriet.
Yes, I do know a lot about cereal boxes. I've seen my nieces / nephews, I'm not really sure what they are, Martin's children, eat out of them.
Right, yes.
Well, they don't. I should just clear that up. They pour the cereal into a bowl. We have strict rules in the house. You can't just eat out of the box.
Right, yes. And his daughters / sons that's what they do. That's what they do.
Yes, fine.
Yes.
So usually a cereal box has all these fun flavours and fun colours, and some of them have little toys in them. But a sign of real progress is to start eating porridge, which doesn't have those toys, and lovely rolled oats from Scotland. And you can add your own flavours like blueberries from the garden or raspberries from the garden, So your working class friends are like those little toys in those boxes, and they're fun. But surely a sign of progress is you ditch that for something white and beige and stodgy. That, to me, is real progress.
But I just have to step in and say that, I mean, where would, for example, Chandler and Joey, Rachel, Phoebe, Monica, Ross, where would they be if they all stuck to this rigid formula that you're prescribing?
Listen, producer Martin, let me tell you something. Show me the six
well,
people you talk to the most, and I'll show you your future.
Oh, this
The
is a fun
sixth
game.
Well, there's my wife.
Is she middle class
my
or
dog.
working class?
She's my sister. Eshaan.
Yes, she's another Langley-Swindon.
She is, I'd like to say, middle class, sometimes pretends that she's working class just by dint of...
Oh, yes,
how
I
she
have seen a
presents
picture of
herself.
your sister. She's the hotter sister. Yes, I know her. Yes.
No, sorry.
Oh.
No.
Easy,
Eshaan.
Eshaan. She's taken
No, she's not the hotter sister, Eshaan.
I don't
I'm the
think
one
this is
with the
appropriate.
looks.
But she's incredibly attractive.
Sorry, what?
I feel I might just bring the conversation back onto where we were about working class.
Yes.
But producer Martin, you also talk to me a lot. So, I mean, do you talk
Yes.
to any working class people?
Jonathan at the garden centre. I often go for a walk
Yes.
down there, and he'll have a talk about the different things that are in stock.
Yes. Two more.
Seasonal produce.
Two more people
Would you-
you talk to,
Two
Martin.
more people.
Your children, are they boys or girls? I can't remember.
Well, at the moment, we're trying to steer clear of any labels just to give them a bit of
Oh,
space.
for goodness sake.
No, listen, the point is they're not working as such, but they're at school.
So even you, producer Martin, don't have working class friends. You and Rishi Sunak are exactly the same.
Well,
Exactly
we're
the
not
same
exactly
person.
the same, are we? This has got a different haircut.
I think working class people, I mean, they're very sort of jolly, fun, ruddy-faced individuals who will provide banter, booze, and comments about Brexit.
BBC, if you will.
Yes. So I feel that they have their place. Do I need to be friends with them? Maybe not. Maybe just a more... I mean, I'm someone who can really get on with anyone from any class and any background. That's just how I am. I'm just one of these people, when I see a working class person, I tend to say, give us a bacon sandwich. And I'm speaking their language. They understand that. So
even if they're on a building site,
especially
you
if
just
I'd
ask
say
for a
especially
bacon
if they're on a
sandwich.
building site, I don't tend to
They
go
seem
on
to know where
building
they
sites because I get being a sort of young beautiful woman, I get objectified, which is fine with me.
I suspect your sister probably has to avoid them
We're back here
significantly
now, are we?
more.
Okay, all right. Well, that's
No, look,
unfortunate.
Eshaan, I don't look. She's a particular type. All right, my sister. She
Beautiful
to some people. But it's in quite a sort of obvious, irritating way.
Not to distract or immediately bring the conversation onto the working class. What is the number that in your bank balance or in your annual salary that demarks a change from working class to middle class?
What in terms of just cash balance
or annual salary?
Annual salary. So I'd say you become middle class once you hit 80k. Is that what we're saying?
Wow, that is
well. Luckily for me, I hit that about 10 years ago.
Okay. Well, I'm.
There's a lot of money in diversity. There's a lot of money in diversity. I have to tell you.
There's so many jobs to be as a diversity hire.
Yes, it's a real money spinning
Correspondent.
There's a real money spinner being diverse. Real money spinner. Books and everything.
We had Chris Atkins on the show talking about his time in prison, and he got a bit shouty, didn't he, Martin? Bit shouty.
Well, yes, very, very impassioned, wasn't he?
Very impassioned. I thought holiday camps were supposed to relax people, not rile them up.
Yeah, I think he thought it was prison rules in the interview, using his voice as a kind of metal tray to rattle along the bars. I don't know what happens in prisons, but I'm pretty sure that's something.
Thank you for that interjection, Martin. Let's take a listen. Our guest today is a writer, filmmaker, and convicted felon. After serving time in Wandsworth Prison, he then monetised his sentence by writing a best-selling book about it. Chris Atkins, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it wasn't intentional.
It wasn't intentional, but it wasn't...
To monetise my trauma, but yeah.
That was just a sort of happy added bonus to being in prison.
Well, it's more of a campaigning book, so people know how bad things are on the outside. So.
Right, well, that's interesting because we'll get to that. I mean, one thing I would like to address first, though, before we get about these supposed terrible places in prison, do you worry that you will have inadvertently started a trend of prisoners profiting off their punishment by becoming authors?
I don't think it's really something people go in intentionally to do. Like when I sort of went to prison, I wasn't thinking, oh, I know, I'll do this so I can get a book out of it. But I think maybe the point you're trying to make is there's a rich tradition of people who do end up going inside.
Jeffrey Archer.
Yeah, I was going to start with Oscar Wilde and write sort of very powerful memoirs that sort of expose the sort of inhumanity and barbarism of the prison system so that the wider public can sort of be exposed to that and hopefully it can affect change.
I'm going to stop you there, Chris. For example, my friend Caroline recently went on a writer's retreat and she had to pay through the nose. She had to pay through the nose to go on a writer's retreat. I mean, she might as well just have assaulted a security guard, mightn't she? And then she'd have got it for free.
I don't think you can draw a direct equivalent between the two. I mean,
Well, Caroline, like you, was an aspiring writer, and then she said there was a lot of distractions because her roommate was very strange, very strange.
Yeah, well, some of my roommates were very strange, let me tell you. I mean, one of them used to sort of execute his bodily functions as loudly as he possibly could to sort of intimidate me. But I guess the solitude of the prison experience does oddly encourage creativity because you don't have distractions and you are kind of just looking at the four walls and a pen and paper. And I actually found that a way to actually in the strangest way. Yes, I mean, I'd rather it hadn't happened, but I was there. I had literally nothing else to do other than watch ITV2. So I wrote a book.
But it's interesting though, Chris, isn't it? Because victims don't get to be creative. They don't get to sit and look at, four blank walls, come up with a best-selling book, do they? I mean, is it really fair?
Yeah, well, I mean, my crime didn't have sort of victims per se because it was tax fraud, but victims can write a book. I'm not saying victims shouldn't write books.
I don't think taxmen. Do you know, Martin? Can you fact check for us? Have there been any taxmen who've written books?
Yeah, I'll just look into that.
I mean, they probably wouldn't be very exciting. I mean, I'll give you that
because they don't have the. Yes, sorry, Martin.
I was just going to say, just off the top of my head, Moira Stewart. I think she's written a book.
Was she a tax? Was she a tax person? Moira Stewart?
She was on the She was on the adverts, wasn't she? She'd say tax doesn't have to be taxing.
Well, there we go. I mean, there's always one example, isn't there? But I'm sure Moira would probably be a lot more successful had she been to prison. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what I really want to get at...
I'd love to know what you want to get at, actually.
Have prisons become too woke?
I think there's a huge disparity between the way that prisons are presented in the media, which is a kind of fantasy of sort of holiday camps and lags having, a cushy time, and the reality, which is what I saw, which is sort of sub-Victorian barbarism, where people with mental health problems and drug addictions were sort of brutalized in the name of public bloodletting, in a way that actually makes all their problems worse and make them more likely to reoffend.
Well, you say brutalised, but there were reports of an inmate having caviar in his cell, another inmate having a photo booth in one of his cells. This doesn't sound like brutalised people to me, Chris. This sounds like people having fun at a holiday camp. and writing books. I mean, what other things were they doing?
I do actually find the whole holiday camp thing quite offensive, if you don't mind me saying. Where I was in Wandsworth, you had teenagers who were self-harming on a daily basis because they hadn't got their mental health medication. When I was in Wandsworth, it had the highest suicide rate in the UK. Prison suicides have spiked during the lockdown when all kinds of rehabilitative programs finished. So to talk about them being holiday camps and to sort of trivialise it with stuff about caviar and photo booths is frankly childish.
Chris, sometimes dark things happen at holidays. I mean, I went on a holiday with my sister and actually Martin, who's my brother-in-law. And do you remember, Martin? It got very dark. We had a lovely time for most of it. But then Martin's dog went missing. Do you remember, Martin?
I'm sorry, I came on this to talk about prisons and to talk about the collapse of the criminal justice system and the terrible, terrible treatment that people with severe mental health problems are subjected to on a daily basis. I mean, if this was your husband, if this was your son, and they'd made a mistake and done something wrong, and they'd been sent to prison, you would be horrified.
No, Christopher, if they can't do the crime, they shouldn't do the time.
I think it's the other way round.
I think it's the other.
But the point is everyone sees prisoners.
If you can't do the time,
right,
you shouldn't do the crime.
Everyone sees prisoners as this other group of people who are just so alien to them, they might almost not be people. And they think that the best way to treat them is to be as barbaric and as cruel as possible. Until it happens to them or it happens to someone close to someone they know, and suddenly they see the horrors for what they are and think that the treatment that people are subjected to inside has no place in the 21st century.
Well, look, I mean, it's getting a bit dark, all this, and
prisons are very dark.
Well, if you'd let me finish, Chris, I think if we think of Liz Truss, who of course was a Justice Secretary, and she said she talked about Shawshank Redemption being her favourite prison movie, and she said, and I think this is so true, that it shows prisons can be very difficult places, but they can also be places of hope where people decide to do things differently.
It's interesting you bring that up because in Shawshank Redemption, Tim Robbins' character is gang raped on a regular basis.
Can be very
One of the inmates
places.
is shot dead by a corrupt officer, and it's so hideous that Tim Robbins spends 20 years digging through the walls with a spoon in order to escape.
But
the idea that he's a place of joy is just...
He ends up on a little boat with Morgan Freeman.
Because he's not in the prison.
To be in a little boat with Morgan Freeman.
I think you've got to... If you're comparing it to Shawshank...
That's sort of nitpicking, isn't it? I mean, let's say, Christopher, what's your favourite prison movie?
See, I'd say Shawshank. I'd say Shawshank, but for different reasons.
Like Liz Truss.
For different reasons.
We actually have a selection here to choose from. If this is helpful for you, Chris, we've got Get Hard. That's starring Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. It's a sort of light-hearted rom. It's more about the American prison system, but it's a bit of fun.
I haven't seen it.
That's fine.
Sorry.
The Great Escape. Okay. Apart from those are nice prisons.
And they all die.
Well, swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really?
I think we're slightly getting off topic. The problem we have is that prisons are a kind of forgotten ghetto, which is where people who have completely been failed by the education system, by the health system, by the social care system, are just dumped and hidden away out of sight from the rest of polite society until they end up destroying themselves. And I think that Dostoevsky said that you can judge a society by how it treats its prisoners. And we have some of the worst prison conditions in Europe. And I think that's a national embarrassment.
Can I stop you there? Is Dostoevsky, is that something you read in prison?
I actually read before I went to prison, but yes, it's called Crime and Punishment.
That wasn't something you learned in prison. Crime and Punishment. Oh, that sounds another book about prison. He probably wrote that in prison, didn't he? Didn't he, Martin? Can we fact check that?
I'm not sure that he did, but I'll certainly get on it and get you an answer before the end of the recording.
I mean, listen, Christopher, I hear what you're saying.
Can you not? It's Chris. Only my mother and judges call me Christopher. It's Chris.
Okay, Chris. I think what I really our listeners will really want to know is how big was your flat screen TV in your cell?
This is exactly the point. That all people do is obsess over the trivial, pathetic details.
Not answering the question, though, are we?
Trivial, pathetic details of the minutiae of prisoners' lives and try and peg this kind of mythical soft justice holiday camp narrative onto just like the details of like, how many pairs of socks have they got? And, what kind of telly are they watching? Where the problem is prisons make crime worse. You send people to prison for a very long time.
No, do you know what? I'm going to argue with that. You say it makes crime worse. But the problem is really, isn't it, is the prisons themselves. That's what's making crime worse. These prisons are so lovely with their TVs, with their little chances for people to become best-selling authors, that people are going back. I mean, we've got a very high rate of reoffenders in this country.
Yes, we do. And I want to talk about that, actually.
75% of ex-inmates reoffend. So that
Which
just
is a travesty.
They're having such a lovely time, they want to go back.
No,
and the other 25% are becoming best-selling authors.
That's a very, very, very sort of sad and simplistic way of looking at it. The reason they go back is because they're so traumatized by the experience.
Or they haven't finished their book.
Their drug problems get worse. Their mental health problems get worse. And then they come out with absolutely no support network, nowhere to go, no housing, no education, no hope, no family, given 60 quid and told to live on a park bench. And surprise, surprise, they end up committing crime again and going straight back to where they started. And the cost to society is staggering. They estimate it's about 20 billion a year is the cost of reoffending. And that's because our prisons are so barbaric.
Do you think that what we could do about that is, with the costs, is instead take away money from the courts? So then we could put more of that into prisons. So actually what we could do is probably bypass courts altogether and just fast track people straight to prison.
But people are innocent until proven guilty, so you need a court to judge.
Yes, but we've also got to think about what's cost effective, And actually say innocent till proven guilty. You can usually actually tell who is innocent by the price that they pay on their lawyers, because people who've got better lawyers tend to be innocent more often. I think
it's nonsense. You might as well throw them in the water and see if they float. I mean,
therefore, I think I'm making a good point here.
Well, no, because under legal aid, anybody is allowed a good defence when they go before a court of law.
But legal aid, giving all this money to paedophiles, that's what happens.
This is, again, it's another great right-wing myth that when people get legal aid, the money doesn't go to them. And you see these headlines going, paedophiles getting 20,000 on legal aid. It's not going to them. It's going to their lawyers to make sure that when they are convicted, the conviction's safe because they've had the best possible defence. If they have an absolutely hopeless lawyer, it's not fair.
Putting money into the pockets of paedophile defenders.
Everyone is allowed a defence in front of a court, whether it's me, you, Boris Johnson, or a paedophile.
I wouldn't be in prison.
Justice is blind.
That wouldn't happen to me.
Justice is blind.
That wouldn't happen to me.
Listen, the topic I've come on to talk about is about the children of prisoners, okay? Because you can say that, someone's done something wrong, they shouldn't have done it, can't do the time, etc., etc. But the families of the prisoners, the people who suffer most, and they're often completely innocent. So you have children of prisoners who lose their father for sometimes years at a time, and the impact that has on the children is absolutely devastating, and they've done nothing wrong. And these are the forgotten victims of the criminal justice system. So
do you think it should be, if you can't do the time or have children, don't do the crime?
I think people should obviously think about the impact on their children when they are committing crimes, and anything that can be done to educate people of that, I applaud 100%. But when judges hand down prison sentences, they're not just handing down the sentence to the person in the dock, they're handing down a sentence to their wife and to their children as well, who often actually have a far worse time. They sometimes have to lose their homes, they have to change school, they get bullied, they obviously suddenly lost all source of income. And these are the forgotten victims, and people aren't talking about the children enough.
The sins of the father. I think that's quite poetic, isn't it? Probably next time you're in prison, maybe you could read up that quote and find out where that one's from.
I don't intend going back to prison.
I can't remember. Well, I mean, you say that, but I think you're writing another book, aren't you?
I am writing another book, but it's not about me going back to prison. It's about other people going back to prison.
Do you think the third in the trilogy? So first one's you being in prison, second one's other people being in prison, third one is what? Return to the stretch? Return to prison.
As I said,
Chris
it's
Atkins
not
back again.
a commercial enterprise.
Just want to say, while you were there, I think there was 4 different justice secretaries who came and went.
Yeah.
What was your favourite? I personally liked Chris Grayling.
I mean, Chris Grayling was, nothing short of a psychopath. He tried to ban books. He actually passed a law that would ban
you just stop people writing them.
Prisoners reading books inside, which gives you some indication of the kind of myopic insanity that was being enacted on the criminal justice system by various administrations. Bizarrely, Michael Gove, I have to say, was the best of the bad lot. He was actually trying to bring in some pretty liberal changes to the system, specifically extending the use of home detention curfew and just bringing in more rehabilitative measures, education, courses, training, and so forth. Unfortunately, 2 weeks after I got into the prison system, the whole Brexit vote had happened, and he obviously got moved. And then Liz Truss came in, and she was nothing short of disastrous.
Yes. I think we can all agree that Liz did a wonderful, wonderful job. Well, Chris, thank you so much. Have a wonderful time, and I hope that the next bit of a stretch you do is much less than 2 years.
Okay, I never thought in my life I'd want to go back to prison, but today has changed that. But
well, that's what happens. They keep wanting to go back.
Thanks for getting me on.
That was another edition of Non-Censored. Please check us out again next week. And also, Martin, I'll hand this over to you as the admin man. What do people need to do next?
They need to hit like and subscribe. Very important that you do both of those things. Also, why not tell a friend? Someone down the pub or just on the way to work. You just say, hey, I'm enjoying the podcast. It's called Non-Censored. Check it out. Oh, and give us 5 stars as well. Why not?
Martin, you keep saying hit like. This isn't YouTube. This is a podcast. You leave a review, you give us 5 stars. That's how it works.
Yes. Well, just if you could just hit all of the positive buttons that you can see on your screen, that would be a great help.
With thanks to Rosie Holt, Brendan Murphy, Eshaan Akbar, Ed Morrish, Ahir Shah, Charlie George, Suze Kempner, and Chris Atkins. See you all next week for another edition of Non-Censored.